So I also got a question. I don't have the question here, but you know, well, and I've gotten messages about this from you guys too, saying, you know, working with live musicians, you know, we call it like fusion at SCE, right? So it's like live fusion, where basically you'll have like a drummer or a violinist or a saxophonist playing along, you know, with us at a wedding. And like, how does that work? How do you handle it? What do you play? Do you do anything differently? How do you hook up? Like all that sort of stuff, right? And it is a newer thing. I never did, you know, I've only been, last couple of years, I think like, you know, Jason, Jani, and Jeff and all that, they've probably been doing it, you know, like way, way longer. I only came to SCE in 2017. So that's when I started working with live musicians, like after that. But yeah, I'm going to give you my tips. And there's actually, when I was like going through it, there's a lot more than I thought. It's a lot of little things, a lot of little nuances to kind of think of. But this is all trial and error too. I got a lot of the tips from Jeff and Jason, but then, you know, working with them and running into little snags and here and there, you know, I definitely lived and learned through this. So I figured this might be pretty useful. So let's talk live musicians. So there's three. When it comes to fusion, at least with us, there's three main musicians we work with, right? It's either a violinist, an electric violinist, a saxophonist, or a drummer. Now, obviously, we book out, you know, guitar players and, singers and violinists and, you know, like quartets and stuff like that for like ceremony. But like, that's not like with us, you know what I mean? They just kind of do their own thing. Like these are the three main things that like literally we have to work together with, okay? So first one being the drummer, okay? When it comes to working with drummers, big tip is try and stay on point with beat mixing, right? Obviously, the drummer is going along with you. You know, I don't play anything specific for the drummer. Like, I don't change my sets or like how I'm DJing because I'm with a drummer. The drummer, especially a good drummer, they'll stay in the pocket and they'll just play along with you and have a great time. But if you're, you know, when you're mixing, if you make like 10 BPM jumps, 15 BPM jumps, you know, if you're kind of like, if you're ballsy in that way, you know, try and keep it really smooth with the drummer, because if you do jump too fast out of nowhere, they don't expect it, especially you never worked with them before or nothing, you're going to mess up the drummer and he's going to have to stop. And then sometimes they tap their sticks, like they'll literally like stop and then they'll be like, and then they'll keep going to kind of get the beat. It's hilarious. But you don't want to mess them up, you know? So try and keep it as smooth as possible. If you're going to make a big jump or you're about to drop some crazy shit on the one, let them know, you know, hey man, I'm about to jump BPMs real quick. And then they'll literally like anticipate it. And then it's just a smoother experience. Okay. But that's it with drummers. I mean, that's really it. As long as you stay smooth, you know, you're pretty good. They kind of just work with you, you know, and they stay in the pocket, and they, you know, the good ones will just, you know, play along, and that's it. You know, the bad ones can make it rough. I did play with a drummer or two that didn't have a lot of rhythm, and they may or may not have been able to keep a good beat. And that sort of messed me up, and it kind of pissed me off. And but you know, you get to know the good musicians and the bad ones, and then you try and avoid working with them, right? You know what I mean? Now, when it comes to sax and violin, I keep a crate with music with their instrument in it. Okay? You don't have to do this. They'll, like, saxophonists and violinists play along as well, right? And they know most popular music, or, you know, they're real, like, they're smart. Like, the good ones, like, they know the key and they can, like, hear, and then they can solo over it and stuff. It's, like, crazy. Like, just by hearing a song, like, they can kind of tell, like, oh, this is like a C, you know, and then they'll, or whatever. But I like to keep a crate with music, like popular music that has their instrument in it, because like it gives them something to shine, right? I'm not going to just play nothing but from that crate, but every once in a while I try and mix in a song that might have saxophone in it if I have a live saxophonist with me, right? And I also have it organized, you know, dinner and dancing. So like there's dancing songs and there's dinner songs. So, because sometimes they play during dinner, you know, sometimes they play during dancing, sometimes they do both or whatever, but I can refer to that crate, drop a song that kind of has their instrument in it, and it's dope, you know, it's cool. And most of them, they'll know how to play the parts already. So like you drop it and it's crazy, like, you know what I mean? And they just go off, and it's a super cool moment. So give you guys some examples here. This is my crate system for live musicians. So sax dinner, sax dancing, a violin dinner, and violin dancing. For sax dinner, I'll give you like three songs, and you guys can figure it, you know, give you some examples, okay? I Will Always Love You. If you remember Whitney Houston, I Will Always Love You, at the end, it's got that crazy sax solo, boss. Careless Whisper, the most famous saxophone song of all time. Scenes from an Italian Restaurant, great saxophone solo in that as well by Billy Joel, okay? Violin Dinner, At Last by Etta James, right? KASHMIR, right? If you got, obviously it's got to work with the crowd, so don't be dropping Led Zeppelin if you don't have that kind of crowd. But if it's that kind of crowd and you have a live violinist and you play KASHMIR with it's hard, sick, right? And then Bittersweet Symphony, right? Right? There's more than this. I just figured I'd give you guys 3 in each one to give you, just to wet your whistles and, so you can kind of see what I'm picking up, what I'm putting down. You can make your own little crates with this if you ever, work with a live musician in the future. Now, sax dancing, CALABRIA. I still don't know how to pronounce this. Can someone put that in the chat? Is it CALABRIA? I need the phonetics. CALABRIA. You know what I'm talking about. Mr. SAXOBEAT and ROSALITA. ROSALITA is a Bruce Springsteen song. If you guys aren't familiar, it's not. And if you're not in Jersey, it's not going to work. Don't even try it. But there's a lot of Bruce Springsteen, Bon Jovi. They're all from Jersey, so like people like that sort of thing. So ROSALITA, if you're ever in Jersey or you have a Jersey crowd, it's like an 8-minute song. You play it all the way through. But it goes off. It's a very, very one of the top hits from Bruce. Like if you're like a real big Bruce fan, and there's Bruce has that the sax. What was his name? Terrence, I think something. He actually passed away, R.I.P. But he had a great saxophone player, and there's crazy solos in that. And any saxophone player from Jersey usually knows that sort of thing. Now, violin dancing, Ocean Avenue. Okay, Yellow Card has a violinist in it. Toxic by Britney Spears. It's like, like you have a good violinist, they go off. I'm telling you, it's the coolest thing. And then Come On Eileen. Right? Like there's a lot of if you really dig through your music and dig through, all your crates and stuff, you'd be surprised at how many songs have these instruments in it. You don't really realize it. And just putting them together and having them ready and just mix them here and there, it's super clutch. And if you want to go the extra mile, you can actually talk to the saxophonist or violinist ahead of time. Say, hey, listen, I have these crates. I want to share this crate with you. If you know any of this music or do you have any favorites you definitely want me to play that you can go off on, let me know. And you can kind of plan it out, and then you can put those songs on kind of a must play list for yourself to make sure you play that because that live musician is going to crush it, So definitely how I recommend having this, something to kind of think about. Now, let's talk general tips. I have a couple because there's a lot of little nuances when you're working with musicians. So number one, if you're working with a saxophonist or a violinist, they're going to want to plug in. They usually have a wireless system, right? So, it's basically like a wireless mic receiver, and they hook it up, and they have the saxophonists have a little mic that, goes in the hole, and so you can hear it. The violinist, same thing. It's kind of like some receiver thing or whatever, but they got to plug into you. Highly recommend you use an external mixer. In general, I've made videos on this before. I'll link it in the highlight, if you guys haven't seen that video about using an external mixer. But you're going to sound 10 times better, all that. But you're going to have extra channels so they can plug into you. So, you want to have that set up so they can plug in direct. You can have their own volume. You can adjust the volume so they're more in the pocket and everything. They're not too loud or everything. And you can kind of control it too, because you got to be conscious of once they start wailing, especially like a saxophonist, the saxophone, once they, if they got an iron lung and they start ripping on that shit, it can get really loud. It can actually pierce your ears, go through, cut right through the music. And, so you want to be able to adjust it and everything. You want to have its own channel. Now, when they do hook up, always rescan your mics. I had one problem. I'm an idiot. I scanned my mics before, and then they hooked up to me after, and I did have an interference problem one time, right? And I had to quick scan it, and it was just one of those quick oh shit moments. But always rescan your mics. They could interfere. It's all wireless stuff, so don't forget to do that. So a big one is also to know your couple's expectations. So what I do is when a couple books a live musician, I asked him, I was like, so how do you want, the live musician to be? You want them to rip the whole time? Do you want them at certain parts? You know what I mean? Some couples don't want them the whole time. Some couples, they want, they're booked for the reception, but it's they don't have to play every song. Really just off and on kind of thing, do a set and then take a break. Some of them want it a lot all the time. Some of them want it in certain parts. Oh, I definitely want it for this one part when you play this one song. Just know their expectations. I've had couples, especially with drummers, say that, they don't want them to go too nuts. And, I've had to tell the drummer, yo, don't, go go easy. Like, you know, I don't even know the names of some of these like drums or whatever they use, but like sometimes like it'll just be so loud and just so over the top, and they just kind of want it more like in the pocket. Or same thing with like, you know, any of the musicians, if they're soloing, they don't want like, you know, too much of it. You know, they don't want to like, you don't want. It's like a balance, right? You know, like you don't want them to kind of like steal the thunder, not from like us, but like from the couple. But a good musician sticks in the pocket, okay? And so that brings me to my next thing, which basically let them know, okay? If they're not in the pocket, if they're you know, going a little overboard, or they're not really doing what you think the couple wants, right? Because you know your couple, you met with them a bunch of times and all that. Let them know. Hey, listen, man, you gotta, you know, feel free to take a break. The couple doesn't want drums the whole time or whatever. You know, it's tough. It's like a weird conversation to have. You can kind of hurt feelings and all that. And I feel awkward doing it personally, but don't be afraid to let them know, okay? Because at the end of the day, you know, you're the boss. You know the couple best. You know, you want to make sure, you know, everything's good for them. It's if the musician wasn't hired through you and the couple got it direct, then I guess it's like a little more complicated because like it's their own thing. So you got to kind of, I don't know. It's a balance, you know. You're dealing with egos and all that too. But I still don't give a fuck. I'll let them know. You know, listen, calm down. Easy killer. I'll turn them down. You know, I've had people like really go overboard and all that, you know, and, you know, really step all over the song, and it gets to the point where it's kind of messed up my mixing, you know. But then there's also, you know, musicians I work with that are literally fantastic. Like this girl, Gabby, who plays the saxophone. She's, you know, from around here. She is so good. And just knows everything, stays right in the pocket. It just I don't know, she does everything perfect. Like it sucked. Like I worked with her like many times, and then like now everybody else, it's just like I'm always comparing it to her. It's like, well, Gabby wouldn't have done this. You know, so you kind of like whatever. But with that being said too, a big tip I can give you is keep a list of the best musicians. If you work with a great musician, make sure, you know, if they didn't get them through you, make sure you grab their card, make sure you keep a list. And that way, like if a couple asks you about it, like, hey, we're thinking about having a musician, we think it's cool. It's mostly couples that like, you know, a lot of couples that wanted a band, or like, you know, maybe the bride wanted a band and the groom, you know, didn't want a band, they wanted a DJ. So it's like the best of both worlds. You get the fusion and all that, right? You can kind of, well, hey, I got some musicians I'll recommend. They're great. I've worked with them before, you know what I mean? And you can kind of push those musicians, and then also keep a blacklist. I have a shit list of musicians as well that, you know, little, just so I know, just so I remember. Cause like, you know, like forget names and all that. And, yeah, keep a list of both.